Hello, this is Pei Zhang. The topic for this presentation is composing the text. It is often assumed that the way a text is organized and structured depends only on the source, the author, and that a translator should not meddle with it in any way. However, working through the target text in an exclusively linear, bottom-up way, word after word, sentence after sentence, paragraph after paragraph, and assuming that structure has nothing to do with the translator may not be the best strategy. There are two main reasons for this. First, changes of structure may be needed in the assignment. Second, even if structural changes are not a real need, working top-down from structure to word choice may be a more effective and insightful approach. In the first place, macro and microstructural adjustments are often needed. The conventional structure of the target genre may be different from that of the source genre. We may have to change the paragraph divisions. We may have to alter the internal order of a paragraph or even the order of paragraphs. The reasons may be poor writing in the source text or simply different rhetorical conventions in the target language. Secondly, more often than is commonly thought, solutions to particular problems may be in a different place within the text. For example, explanations of complex concepts, networks of concepts, cause and effect relationships, argumentations, repetitions of particular collocations, and terminological preferences can only be discovered if we develop an overall view of the text progression. Thus, instead of translating from beginning to the end in a linear way, we could start by composing the overall structure of a target text. That is, the sum of the parts that make up the whole. Sometimes, those parts are physically indicated by means of section and subsection headings. In those cases, we're lucky because we have a ready-made template that is very useful for our writing purposes. Sometimes, those parts are not overtly signaled, which means that we have to discover the structural pattern for ourselves. Recognizing structural patterns or templates, whether they're explicit or not, and using them in the drafting process is the main purpose of this presentation. When we compose the target text, we organize different types of information into a template, which works as a pattern or gauge that we use as a starting point and a guide when drafting the target text. These templates are to a greater or less degree standardized and conventionalized. That is, their different parts, the types of information they contain, the functions they fulfill, and the terminology and phraseology they normally use can be highly predictable. Becoming familiar with the templates means being able to interiorize them, to anticipate them in the translation process and turn them into habits when drafting the target text, and, as a consequence, gaining confidence as a writer. It is a good idea to be aware of these patterns so that we can understand how the source text is organized and how to proceed when composing the target text. Let's look at some examples. If you look at some fact sheets, you will see that there is a recognizable pattern in them. They are examples of standard structures, which can be helpful drafting devices because they provide a clear idea of text progression and overall coherence. 3 genres will be explored: fact sheets for patients, summaries of product characteristics, and original article. Both summaries of product characteristics and original articles have highly standardized structures, whereas there may be considerable variations in fact sheets for patients and patient information leaflets, not only between languages but also within the same language. Fact sheets for patients are used to give patients information about their disease or condition and its treatment, among other things. Their typical macro structure consists of the following: research, treatments, complications, overview, prevalence, diagnosis, risk factors, prevention, causes, signs and symptoms. Organizing types of information and their purpose. We now move on and see how a specific section of a genre works, in this case, the introduction of original articles. The information in the introduction part is often structured in the following 3 moves. First, review of previous research. Second, identification of a gap in research which needs to be filled. Third, objective of the study. One communicative act in a research article may be expressed in a sentence, a paragraph, or indeed may take even longer to express and need several paragraphs. And therefore, these several paragraphs still constitute one move. The three-move pattern or template illustrated here is not an isolated case, but is in fact the norm in introductions of original articles in the biomedical field. Signaling moves in argumentation. Now we move on to argumentation, a complex rhetorical operation, the purpose of which is to persuade and convince. These are typical in the biomedical and health sectors, a research team wanting to convince the readers of the relevance, validity, and truth of their results. A health organization trying to make the general public aware of the importance of preventing a particular disease. A medical association trying to advise health professionals about the efficacy of using a specific procedure or drug, and so forth. One of the main difficulties in the translation of an argument is that it is not always overt. The other is that it does not take place locally. Composing an argument. In order to provide a more convincing argument, the authors of the study should include these two subsections. First, excluding possible alternative explanations in which they present other possible explanations that the reader might think of, and give evidence to reject them. Second, positive evidence for causal interpretation, in which they present other explanations that support the hypothesis. Recognizing these steps of moves, their communicative purpose, and the way they're linguistically realized is particularly relevant when composing arguments in the discussion section of original articles and other related genres. The methodology presented in this presentation can be used in the drafting of common medical genres, such as patient information leaflets, clinical trial protocols, standard operating procedures, case reports, and informed consents.